Good afternoon, Honorable Minister, fellow speakers, colleagues and friends. It's really a great pleasure to be back here at the Global Landscapes Forum. And everybody who's here and connected on the web already knows that landscapes are important. We know that well-managed landscapes contribute to livelihoods and that degraded landscapes plunge people further into poverty. And, as we just heard from previous speakers, well-managed, thriving landscapes are crucial if we are going to be successful in tackling climate change. And the latest IPCC report has made this crystal clear, and it gives added urgency to all of our efforts. At the World Bank, we work on landscape approaches because our mission is to eliminate poverty by 2030 and to bring about a world where prosperity is shared more equally, especially including the 40% of poorest people in our client countries. And healthy landscapes are intrinsically linked to us meeting these twin goals that we have. So today I thought I would talk about two things. First, the importance of natural capital, because indeed natural resources are the foundation of our prosperity. And second, about biodiversity and why we need to speed up the momentum in this area. So first, on natural capital. One of our recent flagship reports, The Changing Wealth of Nations, tracked the wealth of 141 countries, and it included natural capital alongside with human capital and built capital, such as infrastructure, as a core indicator when measuring a country's wealth. What we found is that natural capital accounts for about 9% of wealth globally, but in low-income countries, it makes up nearly 47% of total wealth. And in lower middle-income countries, more than 1/4 of wealth. And all of that mostly because of agricultural land and forests. So what then does this mean for discussions here? It means that the more efficient long-term management of natural resources is key to sustainable development while countries build their infrastructure and while they build their human capital. Growth is in part about more efficient use of natural capital and about investing the earnings of that natural capital, from that natural capital, such as minerals and renewables, such as forests, into infrastructure and human capital. And that is what leads to the growth in total wealth. So we don't want to look only at GDP, which is a flow measure. We want to look at how countries grow more wealthy and how they grow more wealthy sustainably. And that's where we need to bring in the natural capital. We also found that the share of natural capital, when you count it, it declines as countries move from low to middle to high income status. And that doesn't mean that the richer countries are liquidating their capital. It means that the other parts, the human capital, health, education, populations that get nutritious food, or the services and the things that we get from infrastructure, they are increasing in value. But the interesting thing is that in per person monetary terms in high-income OECD countries, the natural capital was 3 times as much as in low-income countries in 2014. Although their overall share of natural capital was only 3%. That is something that is very important to keep in mind. Natural capital is something that everybody needs to manage, everybody needs to take care of, and everybody needs to grow. So then what are the implications of all of this for low-income countries? They have the opportunity to grow by building their renewable resources like forests and sustainable management of land, because they make up a larger share of their assets. And it also means that they can bring the rents that they get from non-renewables like minerals in order to build other infrastructure and human capital. So as you can see, we have a very strong economic case to look after our natural capital, both at the landscape level itself, but also at the national and global levels. And we need to bring that very strongly into the landscapes discussion. My second point is on biodiversity. I was very happy to hear the previous speakers mention biodiversity. We know biodiversity loss through deforestation, land degradation is a threat to humanity comparable to climate change. The threat is even more profound in low-income countries where, as I just mentioned, almost half of total wealth comes from natural capital and where the poor are concentrated. There are many things that we need to do to halt the decline of our planet's biodiversity, and one of them is, of course, to keep working on landscapes. One of the examples, and you will hear many examples in the coming 2 days, is, for instance, in Zambia, where we support the government and communities to bring some 5 million hectares of tropical miombo forests and grasslands, which are home to globally significant biodiversity, under sustainable management that will lead to results-based payments for carbon sequestration. An estimated 215,000 people will benefit directly from this program, and of those, about 30% will be women. We in the World Bank, we see the 2020 Convention on Biodiversity COP in China, and in fact the entire lead up to that convention as crucial to increase the momentum for global actions to reduce pressures on the environment and decouple resource use from growth. And during the recent COP that just concluded yesterday, I think, there was broad consensus that the world requires a post-2020 CBD framework and that it needs to be more ambitious to ensure long-lasting transformative change. And I would very much agree with Mr. Flasbart in his speech that it's a lost decade for biodiversity over these past 10 years. There's much more that needs to be done on biodiversity, and landscapes are a key possibility of bringing about that change. The approach that the World Bank is taking is to increase the ambition on biodiversity without increasing the burden to countries. We aim to integrate the land-based targets of different conventions and initiatives into single comprehensive programs. We work with our partners so that regardless of the entry point, biodiversity, climate change, agriculture, or land restoration, the end result would be integrated sustainable landscapes which mitigate climate change, maintain the biodiversity, restore the lands, and importantly, improve livelihoods. I very much look forward to the discussion of the coming 2 days, and I thank you very much.